Welcome, and we are live. This is the UTH Fantasy Football Hangout, Friday, 3 p.m., and we're getting some news in from week 4 of the preseason for the NFL is complete. The cuts are coming in, and I am Chad Parsons, at Chad Parsons NFL. You know me from Under the Helmet, the weekly podcast, as well as UTHDynasty.com. With me, Daniel Simpkins, footballguys.com, and for people that don't know, wrote for a moment in time at UTHDynasty.com. I edited some of his articles, and now both of us are over at Football Guys. So, Daniel, welcome. Thanks for coming aboard. Your Tennessee Titans local know-how is going to come in handy with some of their early cuts here coming out, as well as now we're both over at Football Guys together, and you've got plenty in the hopper, both what you've been doing this preseason as well as your plans for the regular season.
Yeah, just really glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Always appreciate being on the show. And yeah, we have been doing a lot of work at Football Guys. It's the busy season. It's been really buzzing. A lot of off-season news to process and a lot of stuff going on. So ready to talk some of that with you, do some questions, and
yep. And what I love is that you blended your strengths in the non-fantasy world with now what some of your feature content over at Football Guys. And I always tell people when they're starting up whatever career, whether it's they want to do fantasy football stuff or anything, it's always, what are you good at? You know, what interests you? And sort of figure out a way to monetize that or basically hit the gas pedal or combine things. And I've just watched you grow in that capacity with fantasy football writing and analysis, and it's been great to see. I just wanted to mention that up at the top.
Yeah, and I think that's so important. You need to recognize your own strengths. That's actually the motto of one of the companies that I work for, like my therapy company, is recognizing strengths to empower recovery. So we're not really working on recovery with football per se, but we are, playing the strengths. I think that is super important to recognize what you do well and find your niche, find the things that interest you, the things that you really enjoy doing, and go after it. And that will keep your passion up. It'll keep you wanting to do it and keep you consistent and keep you going back to it day in and day out. So,
yes, great sage advice there. Whatever. And if it's something you're not currently doing, start with 5 minutes a day. Start with 20 minutes a week, whatever you can do, and you do that over time. It's pretty magical. And there's so many success stories where people just started somewhere, whether it was doing something for free and progressing or just getting better at the craft you're hoping to add to your life. So yeah, let's get to the fantasy football and the NFL news. Week 4, I'm kind of grinding through the tape. I'm about halfway through the game, so I don't have everyone under my belt, but it was a lot of slogging through and a lot of, you sometimes saw random starters out there. Tom Brady played a ton, but then we saw teams where a lot of players that we would expect to be on the cut list today and tomorrow, finishing things out for the 53-man rosters that were just sort of logging snaps, maybe a potential interview, so to speak, putting it on tape for other teams. But just know that a quarter of the rosters are going to be unemployed looking for practice squad spots, and just a very few will get them in the coming days.
Yeah, that I'm kind of an IDP specialist, and I really was surprised to see Michael Kendricks out there for the Eagles, getting a lot of snaps into the fourth quarter. That's kind of been a main IDP story point for today. And yeah, there are a lot of guys out there that are kind of fighting for their lives, some of them expectedly, some of them unexpectedly. He's definitely one that basically nobody really saw him doing that, playing into the fourth quarter. And there's been a lot of buzz that, maybe he's not a fit with what they want to do in that new Peterson system. And so it's really interesting to see all that and see that play out. I will say that I've not really gotten to sit down and watch any of the preseason week 4 games. I did get to see every one of the 1, 2, and 3 games. So I'm caught up there. We'll have to catch up this weekend on the week 4 stuff.
Yeah, and we were spaced out the first 3 weeks where it seemed like 3, 4, 5 games a day, and then they were all thrown at us on Thursday outside of the moved Washington-Tampa Bay contest. And I wanted to start with Tampa Bay that a big subject has been Austin Seferian-Jenkins. He had the run-in. He's been in the doghouse most of the offseason. It seemed like he was on the right track, and then we see him yelling, barking to the sideline. He played a ton of snaps in week 4 of the preseason, where now is it, what are you expecting? Cameron Brate to be the starter? They kind of held him out. Or Austin Seferian-Jenkins, who I think globally everyone says for fantasy, we're more interested if he were to have good snap level with Jameis Winston. But Cameron Brate seems to be doing the little things. You know, he may not be an overt talent, but it seems like it's on the track of either maybe Brate starting the year or maybe it being a muddy committee where it snipes all the value out of everybody.
Yeah, that's what I'm leaning towards is kind of a committee approach because, you know, yes, you said it the best, that Seferian-Jenkins is a physical freak, and you would much rather have him out on the field performing. But there's just been so much going on with him mentally. And, you know, I didn't get to see what happened last night. I just heard about it. But that's not a good look.
Right.
I mean, it just really isn't. Sitting there screaming at your coaches. I'm not sure what they were talking about, not sure what the context of that was, but, you know, you don't want to scream at guys that are in charge of your snaps and in charge of your playing time. It just shows a lack of self-control on his part, which has been the big problem with him.
Well, and unfortunately for him, he's running out of what I call kind of freebie zone when you're on your rookie contract. You're trying to earn a second one. And I can't remember the percentages, but something like, you know, 70% aren't going to get a second contract, something like that in the NFL. And so ASJ, he's locked in with a good/great quarterback, you know, seems to be rising in Jameis Winston, could be a big year for him. But this is an ideal situation. Beat out Cameron Brate, be a good soldier, get a lot of playing time, and then be on track to get another nice contract in the NFL. And just this is a critical time to stay healthy and play nice. And he's healthy at least, but he's not playing nice. And just to see someone with those physical traits really not maximizing it and realize the short time frame he has to kind of put things together and put that onto his resume is disheartening.
Yeah, it really sucks because there are so few tight ends in the NFL that are mismatches in the way that he is. And Jameis Winston loves the tight end. We've seen him go to the tight end a lot. I do think that we'll see him kind of go away a little bit more from the tight end and target Mike Evans more this season. I do think the security blanket days are kind of done. He's progressing and moving on. But you know, he does like the tight end in the end zone, and that would have been a great hookup. And you know, there's a chance that Seferian-Jenkins rebounds here and gets his head on straight, but it's not looking good as things stand currently. So
I wanted to ask you about the tight end position as a whole, because it's one of uncertainty, I'll say, because you've got guys like Tyler Eifert who are going to be out, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, we've got Ladarius Green, who was a big flash name thinking big things, and it just, there's some bit ambiguity, I would say, in terms of 4, 5, 6 of these upside guys that you're probably not comfortable, whether it's injury or uncertainty just about their role or about their floor of targets to open the year. But yet I look on the opposite side, there's a lot of cheap guys, whether it's Virgil Green, Jesse James, even guys like Jason Witten are really cheap. Crockett Gilmore now with Ben Watson out. So there's a lot of names around. Do you have a favorite, say a guy that maybe he could be on your waiver wire, but at a minimum he's going to cost very cheap and add on to trades that you like to open the year if you have some questions?
Yeah, I've been really trying to grab Jared Cook in a lot of leagues, especially dynasty leagues. In my favorite dynasty league that we talk about frequently on this show, Drummer Duck Dynasty, the one that I'm in with Katie and Tim and Brian Mullins, some others that are very familiar faces to the dynasty community. That's a league that I grabbed Cook in this offseason, grabbed him for $1 with my one of my 200 waiver wire bucks. So it was a cheap acquisition. It was something that I needed to do because on this particular roster, I have Dwayne Allen, and he was really my only other tight end. Had been Watson, but of course I've lost him now. So down to Dwayne Allen and Jared Cook. So not feeling particularly great about that position. But I do think that, honestly, Cook's just never had a quarterback as good as Aaron Rodgers. And I know that Cook has had some of his own inconsistencies with his play and with his performances. But I just see Rodgers and him building a lot of rapport. You've seen a lot of that in the preseason games. You've seen a lot of that in practices where they've been working one-on-one to try to improve. And Richard Rodgers is fine and he'll get some snaps, but he's just not as dynamic as Cook. And I just see I see Cook getting maybe somewhere in the range of 5 to 6 touchdowns this year and a decent chunk of yardage, and he can be cheaply had. He's a really cheap tight end.
Yeah, I was surprised that he was featured as much as he was in those segments of the preseason games, and I think that's important. And if anything, I think the takeaway, because I'm a little lower on Jared Cook than you are, I would guess. But I think the big takeaway is Richard Rodgers has turned from someone you could flip and get something for in the trade market to now, if you're in a 20 to 25 man roster for Dynasty, you're in the stages now where you're getting ready for week one. Maybe you fill that kicker, that defense spot, or you got to cut 5 players because rosters expand and then contract, that you need to cut somebody. And I'm always tight ends. What have you done for me lately? What are you going to do for me in September unless you're a big long-term talent hold? And Richard Rodgers doesn't meet any of that criteria. And I could see cutting him if you're not able to package up, maybe get a future third, throwing in your 4th rounder, get something. But if you can't, he's in the crosshairs, I believe, because a lot of things you said about Jared Cook.
Yeah, and the position that the Packers were in last year with everything that could have gone wrong pretty much did for them. They really had a lot of their pass catchers go down or get hurt or play hurt. And I think that's why Rodgers benefited the way that he did, just kind of by attrition, by the fact that there just weren't that many options and they were having to throw shorter stuff because of the pressure that was put on them. Their receivers weren't able to win their routes, and so they had to throw short a lot of the time. So I think that explains kind of the year that Rodgers had. And yeah, definitely, not someone I'm trusting.
Let me ask you a couple other receivers, pass targets in Green Bay that I have on the back end of my rosters, and they have been really, you got to evaluate long-term and short-term, and I'm coming around to this, how many upside wide receivers can you really have? The probability bets, that they're not really one injury away a lot of times. And they're Jeff Janis and Ty Montgomery. And I think Jeff Janis has that allure of big, fast, productive, off the radar, late round draft pick. But man, look at all those intoxicating traits. Well, we've been waiting for a while. I know Jordy Nelson was a long wait, but he was a 2nd round pick years ago. Ty Montgomery, we think of him as, well, he could be a poor man's Randall Cobb if Cobb were to be out. He kind of did that, but at a middling level a year ago. Then he got hurt. Those two guys, I mean, are they winning tiebreakers on the back end of your roster? Do you think they're roster cloggers? Could you see cutting them? What are your thoughts on those two players? Because they're kind of propped up by situation and name cachet, I would say, at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for Janis in particular, I'm just not seeing it with him. I just kind of, he's had a lot of opportunity. Last year would have been a perfect time for him to really kick in and emerge. And you can see when Rodgers talks about him, the frustration that, oh man, I see this physical talent. I see what you could be, but you're not reliable. You're not catching the balls. You're not where you're supposed to be on the field. And that's something that quarterbacks really value in the NFL, and coaches too. They want you to be where you're supposed to be and doing what you're supposed to be doing. And they value that above, your physical prowess in a lot of cases. So you have guys that maybe not as physically skilled, like Tajay Sharp is a great example. He's maybe not as physically skilled as Janis or some of these other guys, but he's where he needs to be. And that's why he's the starting job.
two things, right? Get where you need to go and catch the ball. And we may not like that from an upside standpoint, but it gets you on the field. And I think Tajay Sharp's a pretty good example. He's not going to blind you by breaking tackles or winning 9 routes, over the top. But within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage, when the ball is in the radius, he's probably going to make a play on it, not tip the ball up for interceptions. We've seen that with tight ends and wide receivers in this preseason. That just big plays, going against you, fumbles for running backs, these things that you just – if you're auditioning, it's almost like walking into the room, right, and having toilet paper on your shoe, or not ironing your shirt, or instead of saying hello, having some sort of snarky remark about the receptionist. I don't know, but just it's that first impression, just in a football term, you can't make a lot of times. And Tajay Sharp is an example of, let's be basic, be solid, maybe unspectacular, but do this, and you're going to see more playing time. And going to your Titans now, I mean, we've seen now where guys that haven't been doing that for a longer stretch, they're on the opposite side looking in for a roster spot.
Yeah, a lot of cuts today, in fact.
Yeah. Which one is more surprising to you? I think the two biggest names were Justin Hunter and Bishop Sankey. A lot of Bishop Sankey owners or backers over the years, myself included, were saying, well, obviously with Derrick Henry and especially with him added after DeMarco Murray, I mean, that's just too much to climb to really reemerge with an opportunity there. So cutting is probably his best chance to find a new spot and a new role. But how was it locally with Justin Hunter? Was he someone that similar track, like he had been fading down and down over the years after coming out, right? Didn't some people compare him to like a poor man's A.J. Green, that lanky ball skills down the field? He had a few moments as a rookie, I remember, but it's been very downhill from those moments.
Yeah, definitely. He is one that people around here when he first came out were, and I'll admit I was one of them, that was really excited by his physical skills. Like watching him play at the University of Tennessee, everybody had already had a lot of exposure to him. But what people kind of forgot is, again, and he displayed this at the University of Tennessee as well, is that, he just wasn't reliable and dependable. He wasn't where he needed to be. He would drop things very frequently. That was probably his biggest issue, is just, really bad drops. And the coaching staff worked with him like ad nauseum. I remember, and I know a lot of fantasy owners will remember this too, when our wide receivers coach put that Jag jersey on him and said, hey, until you prove it, you're just another guy. You're just another guy out here, and you have what it takes to be great, but you've got to put in the work and you've got to work at it. And he never really did. And you kind of saw, him have problems off the field as well. Everybody kind of remembers that incident. I think it was a year ago where he got in trouble for apparently stabbing someone. He was acquitted, and he didn't end up having any charges come from that. But the point is that he wasn't putting himself in a really bad situation. He wasn't, with the team. He was not where he was supposed to be, and that was true off the field and on the field for Hunter. So am I surprised by him getting cut? Not really at this stage. Yeah, he had been really trending down. Most of our beat writers had written that he probably would not make the roster, so not a very big surprise. Sankey probably was a bigger surprise, honestly, of the two. A lot of beat writers have projected that he was also not going to make the team, but there were some that thought maybe he could stick on the back end of the roster and be a reserve for them over Andrews. But ends up that I think they think Andrews is a better fit for the power scheme that they want to run. Sankey, I think, would benefit from being more of a zone runner in a zone scheme, and he really just didn't fit with what they were wanting to do with this power game.
Did it kind of come down to that, Antonio Andrews versus Bishop Sankey? You think?
Yeah, I think so. You saw them both get run. I do know. I didn't watch the game last night, but I did hear that they both were in there playing last night, and it kind of was a contest between the two, and Sankey just did not do enough to keep his roster spot last night.
Well, and I think another thing people forget is at week 4 of the preseason, I think largely all those spots are accounted for. It's just mainly they're giving them some run. It's hey, we got to throw somebody out there. And a lot of these teams ran the ball 40, 50 times because it's safe, and let's face it, some of these quarterbacks, you can do more harm than good with third string offensive linemen out there, and they just don't have the reps. They're just so far behind schematically. So run game, it turns into a kind of a college contest, so to speak. But I think Bishop Sankey's always been that guy that I feel like the tape, now maybe it's not what Tennessee has wanted from their scheme, but I just feel talent-wise, and he showed it last night. I did get through the Titans game, that he continues to show that he can get skinny through the line of scrimmage. He has better than average lateral explosion. He's not the biggest guy. We knew all that, but he's someone that in space one-on-one situations, I just feel like he's gotten overall a bad rap, and someone that I don't forget about him. The pedigree's there. He was a strong producer in college, and he resurfaces as the number 4 or 5 on another team. That's someone you shouldn't be surprised if within the next 12 months he kind of rises up and is relevant, maybe through injury and just a fresh start, kind of like a Dorial Green-Beckham, of someone that just it didn't work out in Tennessee is kind of the big thing. And so any other thoughts on Sankey maybe reemerging, or what shots you give to that? If you could carve a role, there are some running back situations that could use someone like him on the back end. And then Dorial Green-Beckham, I don't think we've talked at all on Twitter or otherwise about your thoughts about Green-Beckham's short stint there in Tennessee.
So on Sankey, I agree that him moving on can't do anything but elevate his value. Like I said, he just was not going to fit this scheme, and if he can find more of a gap system to go play in, I really think that will be a better fit for his skills and his size. I mean, he's just not the most sizable guy, and really the Titans are wanting to go to this power game, which, if you look at Henry and to a lesser extent Murray and Andrews, they're more they fit that scheme more, that power scheme more. So it's going to be interesting to see where Sankey lands and if he can catch on. There are a lot of needy teams out there that could sure use a back, and I'm sure they're looking at these cuts today and looking at these guys and calling them up and saying, hey, do you want to come work out for us? So I'm sure Sankey's going to be on a roster somewhere. We'll just have to see where he lands. As for Dorial Green-Beckham, we haven't gotten to talk a lot about that. Man, I kind of have done a 180 on Beckham, to be honest. I really thought a lot of him while he was with the Titans. I mean, like everyone else, I'd kind of heard the undercurrents that there were problems with work ethic and with learning and stuff, but I kind of played it off and said, well, he's a raw rookie in a lot of senses because he went a whole year without playing in college, and that's nothing to sneeze at. That's a long time being out of football and having to get back into it. And not only are you back into it, but you're not at the level you were before. You're at a much more competitive level. So it was kind of a double whammy there for him. But even still, I saw a lot last year just watching him play when he would get in there. That was really encouraging, especially in the red zone. He has those natural ball skills and jump ball skills in the red zone. So it's really encouraging to see that, and I was valuing him as a dynasty asset. But then, of course, he gets traded away to Philadelphia, and it just makes you wonder, like, what did he do that was so bad that they didn't think that they could work with him anymore? I mean, they completely gave up on him. So that's the big question: is where is his head at? Yes, he's made some plays while he's been in Philadelphia in some of the games, and saw him get a nice jump ball in Game 3 in the end zone and look good doing that. But again, like we've kind of going back to what we talked about earlier in the conversation, coaches value players that are reliable, dependable, and are doing what they need to be doing and following their assignments. So I'm not valuing him as like a core asset maybe in the way that I was before, but he's still a nice player, but not one that I want to value as highly as I did before. He definitely gets bumped down. And I don't also, just as an aside, I don't see that Peterson system being the one you want to go to for fantasy value either. So it's going to be one I think that's very run-centric. So
yeah, the big adjustment for me was just the fact that he was drafted by a team and they gave up on him. And that has to be, I mean, there's so much behind the scenes stuff that we can't possibly know. And yet they gave up on a second round pick and someone with enviable traits and an obvious mismatch. We talked about that earlier in the show, that not a lot of guys with his movement ball skills at his size that you can just pluck off of trees. And that's why he was drafted where he was. And he was out for a year. And I just kind of feel like he looks more trimmed down in terms of just his physical structure, I'll say. In the last couple games I've seen where he's gotten time with Philadelphia, you mentioned the nice jump ball. I mean, just a man amongst boys when you get him out on an island versus a defensive back. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's about what is he doing not, deeper down the field or in the red zone, because that's his strength. I mean, I watched every target from last year. I actually put it up on Football Guys because he's just one of those players that I feel this offseason you needed a take on, when all this stuff was happening, because it could lead to a very good buy opportunity if things check out for you and you deem him a value based on the market, or it's an opportunity, man, I got to get out. And I totally get it. The only adjustment I really made was not from a skill standpoint, not from what I think his potential upside could be. It's more of a team bailed, and not just at the end of the rookie contract, they didn't work out a deal and he moved on elsewhere. They moved on so quickly. And you could say, I mean, yeah, they brought in Rashard Matthews, Kendall Wright. I roll my eyes at someone like Kendall Wright. They got Tajay Sharp coming up. But let's face it, they could use someone like Dorial Green-Beckham. You could say Matthews can play a similar type role as the biggest option of the remaining targets. But again, no one wants to kind of bail on a day 2 pick this early in their career. And he was kind of falling down. We thought it was a motivational tactic, maybe like an ASJ falling down the depth chart. But now, there was smoke to the fire. I mean, fire to the smoke. But now I think, can you give me a little more on the Peterson offense and why that wouldn't be conducive for him? Because it seems like the opportunity, unless it's Nelson Aguilar, they cut Ruben Randall, the opportunity is going to be right there in front of him on a platter. And they're going to say, please, DGB, take this lead job. Please do something positive so we can keep you in the lineup.
Yeah, going back to what you said about the Titans, I absolutely agree. Like, we really don't have a true number one receiver at this point in the game. And they're one team that I think will look very hard at that coming up in the draft. It seems like we've spent a lot of first and second round capital on receivers in the past couple of years and come up snake eyes. Kendall Wright was a first round pick, and then you have Justin Hunter in the second, and then Dorial Green-Beckham, and we're getting ready to move on from Wright. I really think so. The coaching staff's tired of him always being injured.
Well, my go-to was his big season. He had like 90 receptions, and I swear 60 of them were on 5-yard crossing routes. I swear. All I did was take notes on this guy running a drag route across the field and doing something any other receiver in the NFL could do. Mm-hmm. And that was his shining moment, basically. Yeah,
I think so too. And it's unfortunate, but yeah, they've really blown their wide receiver or their picks on wide receivers, and so we're going to be back at the drawing board on that, I think, come draft time.
What do you think the value of that Tennessee passing game, where do you think the value lies, if there is one? Is it Marcus Mariota taking a step up? Is it Delaney Walker repeating a strong, lead receiver, almost a de facto role that maybe some aren't expecting as he's in his 30s? Is it Matthews or Sharp not catching, a middling 50 to 65 balls, but actually higher than that? Like, what's the play in that passing game?
I think this year it's Sharp. You just see the rapport that has built between him and Mariota. I think he'll be the leading receiver in the passing attack. I don't know that translates to huge fantasy value.
Like wide receiver
Honestly,
30 to 45, maybe.
yeah. I kind of just see them spreading the ball around as much as they can this year. I don't see Walker getting the same target volume that he had last year. I mean, he'll catch some balls. Don't get me wrong. They've got to go to Walker to some extent, but I just don't see that record volume that we saw last year with him.
The peak year, basically, for a tight end,
Right.
The perfect storm.
One thing that could mitigate things a little bit is Henry is a better pass catcher than maybe some give him credit for. And there's been a lot of talk that they want to get him more involved in the passing game. And I mean, Murray is a competent pass catcher. So maybe seeing some of those running backs catch a few more targets that could maybe lift the tide of the offense a little bit.
One thing I wanted to ask about the backfield is it seems like DeMarco Murray's been treated unitarily as you are the starter, and Derrick Henry, you are the backup. And Henry played in week 4 of the preseason. They had kid gloves, and Murray was nowhere to be seen. And you just consistently saw Murray playing on first drives of games, getting every single tiebreaker in terms of we can't paint it any more clearly. Is Murray going to be a bell cow, or is he going to lose, do you think, goal line work to Henry? Is it going to be 65-35, 60-40? Do you think Henry's like a flex non-PPR kind of play even with a healthy Murray, or do you think Murray's the only real play out of the gate?
No, actually, I kind of see Henry as being that goal line option. I think that they'll try to use Murray predominantly, but yeah, when they get down to the goal line, I think they're going to put Henry in there. We've seen how effective he's been at the goal line, and not to knock Murray. Murray's a talent in his own right, but I mean, Henry's just positively a steamroller when he gets down in that goal line area. So yeah, absolutely. In non-PPR, I'd love to take Henry late, and I think he'll be a touchdown scoring option for the Titans there. Yes, though I will say that in terms of workload, that they will probably give Murray more, at least initially, and if he can hold up to that, they'll continue with that. So maybe like a 60-40 split. That'd probably be my best guess.
Okay. I want to go back to something that Justin Hunter got me thinking about, and it goes along with Cordell Patterson, maybe someone like Derek Rogers, but I'm looking at this history basically of drafted Tennessee wide receivers. And maybe this goes back to all the quarterbacks since Peyton Manning, but it seems like I'm looking at their profiles, plenty of really good athletes going all the way back to guys like, Dante Stallworth, Kelly Washington, Robert Meacham, Demarius Moore was a receiver there as well. But just, I look at it, and basically since 99, they've all underwhelmed, I'll say, from you look at their draft position, you look at their athletic profiles and prowess, and then you see what they've done for fantasy. Very rarely do they post anything that's fantasy relevant. Mm-hmm. And you've got Patterson and Hunter as recent cases. Marquez North is another one that you kind of saw some enviable traits. He fell out of the draft, and now he got cut already, right? From the Rams, I believe, on the first.
The Rams have already cut him.
On the first round, going to 75, which is not a good sign, for someone we thought had some promise. And then they've got other guys that you think, from Jason Kroom, Josh Malone, are big ones coming down the pipeline that could be on that same track of these are pretty darn good athletes, but yet they never really put it together at Tennessee numbers-wise. And then the track record now is they don't do it at the NFL. Is there something to that as someone that I'm sure you see a bunch of games down there for the Volunteers?
Yeah, I think so. Unfortunately, we used to be known as wide receiver U, but yeah, I think you're right. The track record recently has kind of shown that these are, promising guys. They're athletic guys that they recruit, but a lot of them are just very raw and polished products, and people see them coming into the NFL and they salivate because they're really tall, they're really big, fast and they look good. They look the part. But yeah, exactly. Just not like Patterson's a great example. Going back to his college days, he came from a junior college, and they got him for I think 1 or 2 years out of a junior college, and he just really never has put it together in the NFL. A lot of that is just being really raw, having trouble picking up on playbooks and stuff. Like the Viking system is not any system to sneeze at. It's a very complex system. North Turner's system is for wide receivers to learn. So it's not something you would expect someone to pick up in year one. But we're what, year 3 with him, and he's still having trouble with it and still just being really relegated to manufactured touches, special teams type of play. And yeah, I don't think that's really the place you want to look for wide receiver production. It just never really seems to pan out anymore.
Any strong thoughts on Jalen Hurd as a potential 2017 NFL draft pick, someone that's been coming up the pipeline? But I always look at him and he's that taller, but he is, overly, I would say more athletic than average for his size. What's your take on him, as he's kind of angular, and I just have a tough time gauging what he will project to in the NFL?
Yeah, watching him play, yeah, I agree with that. He just doesn't look natural to me. I mean, yes, he's big and tall, athletic. It seems to be the type of guys that Tennessee likes to recruit and put out into the NFL. It's just with him. It looks awkward when he runs. I kind of think of Latavius Murray when I watch him run, to be honest. There's just something not quite right with his instincts. He looks the part, but it looks weird when he runs. And that's,
I feel like he should be more powerful for his size. I feel like his agility is above average, but Latavius Murray's an interesting one. I think Hurd maybe has a little better stop-start ability. Like his feet move a little quicker in short area, which is nice. But he's one that, like, the metrics look great, the early metrics that I used. But it's like I put the tape on and I'm like, I don't see this guy as a day 2 or better kind of projectable NFL talent. And it's just – anyway, so he's one that I'm still – learning about it and kind of creating an early opinion on, and just a tough one to gauge because of his prototype.
Yeah, he's not your prototypical back. And the thing that I think is going to be a problem for him is, you're bigger and faster and stronger at the college level. But these NFL guys, that doesn't really matter as much because you're in the upper echelon of athleticism at the NFL. So yeah, you're big and strong, but guess what? They are too, and it's going to be hard to really make headway. Like you saw it last night. He was really he had some nice runs in the game last night, the UT game, but there were times where he was just getting stiffed by a college defensive line, and so if he's having that kind of trouble at the end or at the college level, I expect he'll have even more at the NFL level.
Yeah, I think it can be hard for people to realize how much bigger or faster or stronger you have to be than your peers at the collegiate level for that to translate and be an advantage for you at the NFL level, where getting the corner, going to the corner store, like Matt Waldman likes to say, to get there. I mean, CJ Spiller can still get there in the NFL as an example, but he's a track guy. He's a 4.3 guy when he's healthy and running well. And I mean, so just imagine when he was back at Clemson, and then you look at somebody that tries to get the corner that's a 4.5X guy, it doesn't work. Or same sort of thing when you line up and try to run somebody over. Ezekiel Elliott was successful, but he was also a top 5 pick as a running back and lauded as basically the best skill position prospect in the draft this year. So it's just like, if you're a middle of the road kind of prospect, thinking that they're going to have difference-making traits and yet they fell to a certain point in the draft, it's not very likely. And one name actually that may fit this outlier rule, and it's a question we got on Twitter from Jason. He said, is Dwayne Washington, a David Johnson 2.0 type guy? He looks like an absolute future star, extremely talented. He's one of those prototypes at running back I like, the big, fast, agile, and can catch the ball. And sometimes they have middling rushing scores coming out. Sometimes, they may not have elite 40 times, but if you're big and you can sort of move, I feel, and catch the ball, there's a place for you in the NFL and rosters. And Dwayne Washington has been one that, who knows, he's going to start as the number 4 projected for Detroit, but David Johnson 2.0 it's sort of a similar profile, I'll say.
Yeah, and I haven't gotten to watch a lot of him, but I will say that I've heard what people are saying, and it's very, very possible that with that Detroit backfield situation that's going on, to really stick there. Abdullah keeps fumbling, and then you have Zinner, who he's impressive, but he's hurt a lot. I mean, that's something that has been a problem with him in his NFL career thus far. A lot of injuries and such. So, yeah, they really do need a power back, and if you can do those things, like you said, catch the ball, and also provide that power role, you're going to stick and maybe even ascend on the depth chart. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have any final thoughts, maybe stuff that the next 24 hours or so for these final rounds of cuts, maybe guys that are going to be, do they stick on a practice squad? Do they not? Or just a depth chart that you're watching heading into the season? What are some things swirling around for you that may really define some of these back end of the roster dynasty guys that maybe you're cutting, if they don't land in an ideal spot or stick with their current team, that you'll be cutting, if it doesn't work out for them here in the near term?
One guy that I've really been watching is DeAndre Carter. I want to see what happens in New England with him. I was really excited about his talent, and I know you've profiled him a few times at UTH. Just getting to watch him, and then having Steve Smith compare him to Randall Cobb, and just see some of those comparisons drawn was really scintillating. And then, of course, the Ravens were the team that took the chance on him initially, and then he went to their practice squad, and then the Patriots ended up poaching him. So I really want to see if he sticks on that roster. He's projected to get cut, actually. So it'll be interesting to see if he sticks. He's one that I've been watching really extensively.
Okay, that wide receiver 6 spot, because Matt Slater is a special team star there. Yeah. That the number 6 spot, if they keep 6, it would be someone like Dobson versus Keyshawn Martin, or Carter, I think, would be the leading candidates if they do keep another one. And yeah, Carter's always one that I've been rooting for, almost like a Michael Campanaro, that they've been kind of sticking around a little bit, getting their shots, and they're on the NFL fringe, but they still kind of have that profile of people that could succeed, but it's long odds just because of where they're coming from, college and NFL draft wise.
Sure, yeah, they're definitely an uphill battle for him being undrafted, and that's something we really have to keep in mind. Even as much as we like these undrafted guys, they're still really just lottery ticket picks.
3 to 5 percenters.
Yeah, they're really low percentage. Draft pedigree does matter, unfortunately. And, you were talking about Matt Waldman earlier. One of the things that made a real early impression on me was reading his column about draft pedigree and talking about how the reps are divided in the NFL and how those players that are drafted higher get more of those opportunities and more of those situations to be successful, and how when they make a mistake, it's kind of like, oh, well, this guy will get it right. It'll be okay. But, an undrafted guy, they don't get that chance to make a mistake. They're going to get, the shepherd's crook really fast if they don't catch on. So
yeah, this is the time of year where it's sort of the ugly, I'll call it the ugly part and the ugly reality of the NFL. Very few spots are available or even to fight for And this is, like you said, I mean, almost all accounted for based on draft pedigree. We see very few top picks not make it through their rookie contract. So they get shot after shot, even if behind the scenes they're underwhelming and they need more to see more playing time, but they still get those practice reps. They're still number 3, number 4 on the depth chart, as opposed to on the street, auditioning for new opportunities next year or when the opportunity presents in season. I want to ask you, Daniel, so as we close up, where can folks find you? Thanks so much for your time and your insights, especially all the local knowledge of Tennessee and the Titans. So where can they find you for this season? What are you going to be putting out over at Football Guys and on Twitter?
Well, of course, my Twitter handle is xfantasyphoenix. And as we were discussing before the show, I didn't change it to Daniel Simpkins NFL because it's just been my long-time Twitter handle and just had a lot of friends and followers that I wanted to keep. So I kept the handle because back in the day you couldn't change the handle without changing accounts. I'm sure that's not the same anymore, but I've just enjoyed that handle, wanted it to stick. So you can follow me there on Twitter, and then of course check out my work at Football Guys. I'll be writing a column this year weekly for Football Guys that talks about the Dynasty waiver wire. Just kind of looking at things each week and seeing who you can pick up, maybe some preemptive guys that you want to look at and pick up before you actually have to pay the valuable waiver dollars for them. I mean, that's a big key in Dynasty, is not having to spend a lot of your waiver budget, so that when situations come up where you do need to blow your budget, you have those dollars when everybody else has spent them, chasing guys. So that'll be something that I do at Football Guys. And of course, check out UTHdynasty.com. It's a place I got my start, and the place I'll always have a special place in my heart for, because it's where I began, and just love the work you're doing over there, and it's fantastic, man. Keep it up.
Thanks so much, and yourself as well. Doing the Dynasty waiver wire, everything you just said is paramount, I believe, to good owner success. Where can you spend $1 or $2 this week, as opposed to who's the guy in a week or two that you could be spending half your budget, or the rest of the league would be spending half their budget? Can you get them now? Can you think ahead? And that's what Dynasty's all about, right? Projecting more into the future than a redrafter would with shallow rosters and only thinking about their starting lineup this week. And I love that. So this is a critical time, the preseason, getting these guys on tape. So now when it's week 6 and Brandon Wilds, is set to see some opportunity, you have a sense of his game. Most people aren't. And so is he going to be one that you need to go in $5 on your Dynasty waiver wire preemptively because Devonta Freeman's iffy? Something like that is where we live as Dynasty analysts, keeping you abreast and in the optimal situations to make recommendations for your own team. So I love that you're going to be working on the NFL fringe for depth charts. That's where the value lies. There's going to be a handful of guys that make a big difference for Dynasty owners through injuries and bye weeks this year. And Daniel, again, Football Guys, you can search by author, as well as it's going to all be in the weekly content page there. And if I could make one plug, and it's something Adam Harstead, I believe, did a recent article, it's my FBG, My Football Guys, is a tool that I've been using for a number of years. It saves so much time. If you have multiple leagues, it's going to give you available players, your players comparatively for the weekly projections, who's on the waiver wire. So it kind of blends together with the content you're going to be doing of here's players with maybe initial opportunity, and then here's some players who are available or not that could be simmering below the surface. But it does all that automatically. You sync your leagues before the season starts. Spend the hour getting all your leagues in there, everything set up perfectly, because now every week on Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever your days are that you kind of check in, maybe make some moves, that's going to save you what? I mean, I think Adam said it could save you 60 hours over the course of the season just based on that one tool. So if you do nothing, if you don't read the articles, don't do anything, just the management of your team for Football Guys alone with a membership is the best plug I can make of having more time to maybe propose trades or however you would like to allocate that in your life, as opposed to checking available players on every single one of your leagues. So that's going to do it for this edition. I am Chad Parsons at Chad Parsons NFL. As Daniel said, you can find me at Football Guys as well as UTHDynasty.com. And you like premium audio content like this, become a general manager at UTH Dynasty, because close to 200 shows that I'll be putting out by the end of this calendar year. It's closing in on 150 or maybe even a little more by this point. So really, audio content, if you want near daily stuff for your commute, or your office time, or your errands, the gym, whatever, UTH Dynasty is going to be your resource, I would say, for getting as much Dynasty-centric content as you can. And one more time, thank you so much, Daniel, for coming on. And great to catch up, as well as pick your brain on some of these vital situations for us as we near Week 1 of the 2016 NFL season. So until next time, never settle, refuse to be average, and keep building those dynasties.